If we look back on 3 historical dates in energy, and I do this so it resonates with you, if you don't have a historical foundation on why these pivots are important, you will never appreciate the magnitude of what is occurring. The most important date in the history of global energy occurred on January 10th, 1901. This was the day they discovered Spindletop. What you're looking at occurred in South Texas, and this was the world's first true oil gusher. This was so magnificent that they could not cap it. And coincident with this was all the inventions of the 20th century. I speak about airplanes, automobiles, when ships were translated from coal to diesel, and it made a lot of convenience and accelerated the comfort for all of mankind. If you look at this beautiful vehicle here, I will speak some Spanish. Necesitamos comprender que esta coche representa. Es muy importante. Esta coche no necesita gasolina, diesel. Esta coche necesita cobre, plata, litio y todos los metales y mineras. I will speak back to English now. I cannot articulate these important messages if I was to speak Spanish, although I do understand it. But to go back to that main point, this is the most famous car in the world, the London cab. The mayor of London, Mr. Khan, has said that he will no longer allow the sale of a diesel engine taxi in the city of London. But who owns this company? Not the English, the Chinese. Geely Corporation of China purchased this famous company in 2012. And they're electrifying these things for their home economy, and the rest of the world will benefit from it. So if we look at all these commodities, what you're looking at here are all the metals and the approximate value on an annual basis. And you can see the power of magnitude between silver, gold, copper, lithium. What I'm trying to illustrate here is in the future, which of these circles is going to get bigger and which of these circles is going to get smaller. If you're in this business and you would like to give that business to your children, you shall surely be investing in that what is a growth industry. To show you why oil is so important, I now show you $1.5 trillion. It is by far the dominant commodity, which is why traditionally most of the bulk commodities follow oil. I believe this is going to change now. I believe it's going to decouple, and it's going to decouple in perpetuity. What does this word mean? It means that we can't control the price of oil because of many factors, but a lot of those other commodities will not be possible unless they're economically viable. This is not Beijing, China. This is not in India. What you're looking at is the pervasive pollution problem of London, England. This is a global problem. There are countries and cities around the world that are addressing this, and it's not just climate change. That's a very polarized topic. What I'm going to suggest to you is that there are countries like China, I think they're far more interested in controlling pollution. And we can do it now, because what green energy is, wind power, solar power, electric cars, electric buses, it's technology. That's what it is. And we are now at a point where this innovation and how these things have accelerated, they are now indeed commercially viable. Within this pivot, and as these things are adopted, there are going to be unintended consequences. By that I mean there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. I am an investor, so I'm interested in following the winners. I have a friend in Chicago in the United States who is an investor like myself, and he has made a career out of doing this. Never invest in the story on page 1 of the newspaper. Invest in the story on page 16 that will one day be on page 1 of the newspaper. There's another way you can look at this. This is mathematics. You're looking at the fat man of fossil fuels. If what they're telling us, we are going to go away from fossil fuels, well, it's a scale. What you take from one side, you have to give to the other. So whether you're running a business, you're an investor, you're trying to encourage your children what to take in university, you want to live in that green box, because those are the businesses that your children and grandchildren will be operating. And as an investor, it's the products that feed into that. This is a story that everyone's been following very carefully since 2014. I would think everyone here is aware that the price of oil collapsed and is still trading in a low band. When you have cheap oil prices, you have winners and losers. I can assure you, people that pay for petroleo and diesel, they enjoy a lower price of these products. And so you have this two sides, people that produce oil products and people that consume oil products. I need to accelerate your familiarity with the oil business. Now, I know oil very well, and I'm uniquely experienced to be able to tell you this story. Why so? My background is electrical studies. That's what I did as a young person. I invested over 10,000 hours understanding how power systems work and how electricity functions. But I live in Vancouver, Canada, and Vancouver, Canada is one of the most important cities for resources and oil. If I'm an analyst in oil, and I followed it for 15 years, I've also invested 10,000 hours in the study of oil. But I also understand the things that feed in to power systems. Energy. When I'm talking about global energy, we need to appreciate that Japan is different than China, is different than Europe, is different than the United States, is different than Africa. So before I give you a very colorful 5-minute introduction that I hope resonates for many years in the future to make you familiar with why it's different this time with respect to oil. The demand for oil today is 97 million barrels per day, and you can see my very unscientific graph. Of each barrel of oil that's produced, it's not all gasoline or diesel. 55% is used in transportation. 45% is for enhanced products. Rubber, plastic, fertilizers, petrochemicals. So that's an important designation. And if we look now what the experts are telling us. See where we are today? The red square? I can never predict the future. I'm not that good. The experts tell us, big oil, that is, that in the future, there will be consumer growth in the demand of oil. One of the big think tanks in the world, the IEA, they believe there will be growth in the demand of oil. And they're the experts. They know better than everyone. The IEA told us about 7 years ago that it would take, I believe it was 15 years to have 150 gigawatts of solar power, and they were wrong. By 2016, the world had 290 gigawatts. Now we'll talk about that later, but just to show you what the experts suggest to us. Have they forgot about these things? Innovation, adoption, fuel switching, technology. And what about you, the customer? You have a choice too. You may not buy the products or use the products that have been there for 100 years. So you have this confusion. Some people will tell you the demand of oil will fall. And some people tell you the demand of oil will continue business as usual. Let us look at the statistics and let's figure out what's going to happen here. I was in San Francisco earlier this year, and I told them that I believe innovation, adoption, technology, they are terribly negative for petroleum products in the internal combustion engine. So the second important date to look back at energy, and I do this as a historian, I like history, and you can only do that looking backwards. This was the day that OPEC, the global oil cartel, which produces about 33 million barrels a day, this is where they capitulated. Translator, they gave up. They acknowledged that if you have 100 years of reserves, you are going to have a hard time finding customers 20, 30, 40 years in the future. They did this for many reasons. This pollution, climate change, innovative products, technology, but it's also the way we extract oil is a game changer. This is the way oil used to be produced. For those that are not petroleum engineers, it's very simple. They would take a straw, go straight down, have an area of pay, and repeat many times. That changed. This is the way we do it now. On this day, 90% of the drill rigs operating in the United States do it the new way. You take one straw, you drill, and then you go sideways for 2 kilometers. And then you do it 25 or 30 times. And then you frack the rock, you break it. This is a game changer. I cannot underline enough how scared of this technology the Saudi Arabians and the incumbent oil producers are. I need to show you why it happens so fast. This is where it occurs. This is a United States of America and Canada to a lesser extent technology. This came about from the invention of 2 gentlemen. George Mitchell, who lived in Dallas, Texas, was drilling vertically. And they're the ones that cracked the fracking code. They were drilling for natural gas. In 2002, another company in Oklahoma, run by Larry Nichols, that company was called Devon Energy. And what they were doing is the drilling sideways. So in 2002, they married the 2 companies, and they started working together, drilling sideways and then breaking the rock, fracking. In 2002, they drilled 7 wells. 2003, they got a little bit more efficient, and they drilled 55 wells. Saudi Arabia, just to give you some understanding, the world's largest oil producer, all of the oil produced in Saudi Arabia comes from 3,000 wells. You have that translation? 3,000. So by the time 2015 came around, how many of these horizontal frac wells did they drill in North America? 150,000. This is a game changer. Do you know how many of these wells the American companies did outside of the United States? Less than 200. They were about to start in 2014 to go to formations around the world, and that's when OPEC capitulated on November 27th of 2014, and they collapsed the price of oil. The problem is, it did not work. These American horizontal fracking companies became efficient in the matter of 2 or 3 years. At today's oil price, almost all of them make a profit. The 3 most important letters in global energy are MBS. You need to follow him very carefully. He's the Deputy Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He's now 32 years old. He will become king. And he decided he has 2 choices. In Saudi Arabia, they used to joke around in the 1970s, save some of the oil for us, the future generations. Now the problem he has is, what do you do with 100 years of reserves? It's not only his problem. You have many countries, Iraq, Canada, Venezuela, the United States. If you had 100 years of oil reserves, what would you do? What would you do? What you're looking at here is the decision of the Saudi Arabians to divest from oil into other things. Now, I call it Progressville. You're going to have a hard time translating that. Una pueblito de progress. It's a fictitious place. They are now investing hundreds of billions of dollars in things that are made of electricity. Electrification. Now, there'll be many ways they will do this, and it's all part of his Vision 2030 and this divestment movement. Divestment is a group of people, traditionally university foundations and huge pension funds, that have decided we will no longer invest in fossil fuels. More than 5 trillion with a T, of money that's managed by these people has pledged not to do that. And what are they investing in? Well, technologies. Every time they invest in wind power, solar power, technology, anything, what they're really doing is investing in metals, in mining. I believe that as this movement goes forward, you will see them getting more involved in global mining companies, because it's not possible. I'm going to show you as we go through the rest of this energy presentation, but who are the 2 biggest supporters of divestment? Number 1 is Norwegian Petroleum Fund. And number 2, Saudi Arabia. You can't make this up. Shell Corporation is run by this man, and we have to look at what they're doing. They're now saying, we are in the energy business. We shall not only be in oil or gas, we shall be in many things. And look at his quote. I read it for you. Investing in technology we don't understand outweighs or is more important than the perils of moving too slowly. They need to invest in the technologies that will one day surpass them. And this is exactly what a progressive leader of any corporation should do and does do. They look at themselves in the mirror and they say, for 100 years, we were the largest corporations in the world. I list you here in 2006 who was big in the world. And the problem they face is that technology companies are all much, much bigger. It's fair to say now that big oil, big auto, they are all subordinate to technology. And it's the technology companies that are the leaders and moving all of these things forward, and they shall now follow. They get a bad rap, I think, traditionally. Everyone always thinks that they're cheating the consumer. There's also been many rumors that they get together in rooms and we don't have electric cars because the big oil companies get together with the big car companies and they keep the business model the same. And we as consumers buy what they give us. Not exactly true. You need to understand how an automobile is made. And this beautiful picture of a Maserati of the 1930s is really the same. There's no difference. The way we make cars today is the same as we used to make them back then. But there's countries that don't have an oil endowment. Japan has no oil. Germany has no oil. They don't care about this. What they care about are their millions of employees that work for the number one industry in each country, automotriz. They make things like this. Cranks, pistons, radiators, valves, belts, chains, mufflers. How many mufflers in an electric car? 0. Not one. The reason they've been so slow is because they did not want to change the platform of how a car is made. Anyone that has family in the automotive business knows you don't make money selling cars. You make money servicing cars. We've all been there. Has everyone here changed the brakes in their car before? Say aye. Is it expensive? Yes, it is. There are 6,000 to 7,000 components in the average automobile. This is an electric car chassis. There are 100 components of significance in an electric car. But what do they require? Metales. Mucho más cobre. All of these things. If we were to go into an electric car world, these are the things that are going to get impacted the most. I leave it here. I see people are taking pictures. So this is what you want to be involved with. Invest in the future. Mind you, this is not representative. Copper and nickel are big industries. But these are all growth sectors. And they're all things that are mined. Or as my friend Dennis Gartman would say, he likes to invest in things. If you drop them on your foot, it hurts. Metals. We're talking about motorization here, the difference in transportation. You don't need to buy gasoline. What you and your family need is transportation. That's what you're looking at buying. And when you talk about motorization, here's a simple statistic. Now, we already know that 55% of oil is consumed by the internal combustion engine, transportation. If you make the internal combustion engine more efficient, you use less oil. Does anyone here dispute that fact of science? What few people know is that electricity, now I use the United States, 45% of all electricity that's generated is consumed by an electric motor. When you make an electric motor more efficient, you use more copper. When you convert from the internal combustion engine to the electric, you have yet another electric motor. We will need tens of millions, hundreds of millions more electric motors in the future. This gentleman here, for those that are under the age of 30, you will not know who he is. This is Lee Iacocca. He is a famous American executive, and he saved Chrysler Corporation. And he was, in fact, in charge of the Mustang program at Ford in the 1960s, absolutely right. And what he said about automotriz, in this business, you either lead or you follow or you get out of the way. They are taking this revolution very seriously. Volkswagen had an individually unique pressure point. They now have to have redemption because of Dieselgate, which is going to cost in excess of $20 billion. They are accelerating their electric car program. Not only for this, there's many, many reasons. We're going to go through a few of them today. What keeps them awake by night is not a giant baby crushing cars on the streets of New York City. No, it's technology. We already know that technology companies are way bigger than automotive companies. The average value, market capitalization of US car companies is about $50 billion. Apple Corporation has $250 billion in cash. If Apple gets involved in the car business, which they're doing, and many other people, but they're not going to get out of the way. They have to adopt technologically advanced vehicles. All the young people here, although they may not have known Lee Iacocca, they surely understand Uber. If you're 14 years old, you have a chauffeur at your fingertips 24 hours a day for about $10. My generation did not have that luxury. There are young people today that are not obtaining one of these. They will never be a customer of Big Auto. Convenience. They don't want ownership. They want access. And these things are acting like such a pressure point where these 14 companies control 54 major car brands. And they've been superseded by a couple of technology people. These are car sales going back from 2007 to 2016. Whenever I show you a graph like this, I will point directly at the important part. It's this thing right here, 1% of car sales. Over 90 million cars were sold around the world last year. And these people, the experts, tell us only 1% was the electric car. It hasn't arrived yet. I mean, surely Guadalajara, Mexico is not a world capital of the electric car. Of course not. What I'm here to tell you is that all the major companies are going to have a tremendous customer offering in the next 2 or 3 years. So the next part on this chart, I'm going to put one more bar. Here it is now. This is the year 2025. 7 years from now. You will probably be in the market to buy a new car. And people will tell you that the percent of electric vehicles will be 8%, 10%. Some people say 15%. It's still not going to impact oil. That's not true. What they fail to remember, this 10% are going to be cars like taxis, the professional Uber driver who drives 200,000 kilometers in 1 year. And each time they do this, they displace 40 or 50 or 100 cars that you and I drive 10 kilometers per day. This is tremendously negative for the oil business. So I ask you one more time, do you believe the demand of oil will be 110 million barrels per day or something lower? I suggest it will be something like this. The real number doesn't matter. The point is, this is no longer a growth business. I have a unique experience with the electric car. I'm the first person in the world to drive an electric car across America. Now, with a caveat, for a book tour. Other people did it before me. I drove from Boston to Florida to California, back to Canada. 13,500 kilometers, sin problemas. Nada. It works incredibly well. And it's a little company called Tesla, and what they did is they installed superchargers all over America so that you could drive 250 or 300 kilometers, charge for 15 minutes, and keep going. That was April of 2016. There are people that will tell you it's going to take the car companies many, many years to build charging so that you buy the car, so that you're comfortable and you're not concerned about running out of electricity. I will show you what this looks like today, 18 months later. There's the amount of chargers located in the United States today. They're everywhere. This little company did it very quickly. If Volkswagen, General Motors, Ford, and they do take it seriously now, they will be everywhere. So common will they be, you will never even ask the question. My gas station is a cable made of copper. In the United States of America, there are 150,000 gas stations. There are about 140 refineries that make products. What you're looking at here will be installed in the tens of millions. They will be everywhere. And why am I so sure of that? Because each 3 meters all over the world is electricity. We already have a tremendous network of electricidad. It's only going to get bigger. If I'm going to talk about electricity, because this is the future of energy, I need you to understand the various numbers. And this is a really easy thing to do, because when you drive around and you look at a large power plant, doesn't matter what it is. If it's carbone, coal, gas, nuclear, hydro, they're typically 1,000 megawatts in size. So that's 1 gigawatt. Is that not the easiest number you ever remembered in your whole life? A large power plant is 1 gigawatt. Okay, now we're clear. Now let's count the amount of 1 gigawatt things we have in this world. They tell me that I drove across America, and if you drive a car like that, you actually are using coal or fossil fuels to fill up the car. That's not true. The future of this will happen increasingly with renewable energy. Wind, solar, hydro, also natural gas. It will be a basket of things, but coal it would not be. The coal industry, to generate electricity, I make it very clear, is something that has had a huge fall in utilization. And it's all because of natural gas. You all know him, Senor Trump, but you probably don't know the guy on the right. Who's he? The fellow on the right is the governor of West Virginia. This is one of the major coal mining locations of the United States of America. His name is Jim Justice, and he is a billionaire, and he is the governor, and he was elected as the Democratic governor of West Virginia. But what did he do in August? Early August, he became a Republican. And Donald Trump came to West Virginia. And why did he do this? He became a Republican in the hope that thermal coal electrical generators can obtain a $15 per ton subsidy to keep that type of electricity competitive. You can't make this up. Wind power, solar power, they don't need subsidies anymore. You know what they need? They need natural gas. Because when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, you need to be able to have something that works as so-called peaker power. And it has to turn on immediately. America has 100 years of natural gas resources. Mexico has tremendous gas resources. LNG is now being transported, liquefied natural gas, around the world. Why is natural gas the best type of power to work with wind power and solar power? Well, if you have a nuclear power plant, it takes 30 days to turn it up or down. Not so good. I need it right now. Coal takes about 7 days to go from maximum to minimum. That's not so good. Natural gas is immediate. You just go and you have power when you need it. But also think of it as a business. You have tremendous reserves. Once you put the pipe into the plant, you're done. You're done. There's no nonsense about moving all this material around. So they fight about these jobs. This is the job deceleration in U.S. coal. Now, you don't have to be a mathematician, but I don't believe this is a growth industry. This is the job growth in solar power. Solar power takes a tremendous amount of copper, a tremendous amount of silver. This will continue to grow because it's being applied on a global scale. But do you know what the fastest growing job in America is? The service technician of a wind turbine. Look where the investment has occurred in 2016. Do you see any investment in the old way to make electricity? No, not too much. Natural gas is good. All the new investment are on these other forms of electricity. Those are all growth businesses. If you were to take your 5-year-old granddaughter and say, you know what you should train and maybe be interested in? First, electricity in general, and then let her choose to be a designer, an engineer, an architect of electrical work, you name it. That is a fantastic future, no matter where she goes. So I show you the geographic area of the United States of America, and you see the orange bubble, that's natural gas. You see the gray bubble, that's coal. 10 years ago, coal was 50% of the electricity in America. Today, it is 30%, and it will continue to fall and fall and fall. The green and yellow is wind and solar. Those will continue to grow and grow and grow. The United States of America has a capacity, electrical capacity, of 1,100 gigawatts. Basically 1,100 plants. The United States of America is 9.5 million square kilometer. Same size as China. Identical. Take a look. Here's a map of China. Forgive the shape, you might not recognize it, but that is indeed China. China and the United States are roughly the same size, except China has 4 times more people. We all know that. And it's been the fastest growth market in energy in the world, without question. And they're sourcing their electricity from many sources. And it's changing. The capacity of China today is now greater than 1,500 gigawatts, and it is a growth business. What is China doing? Because what China does will echo around the world. I show you some numbers here, but first we look at this picture. You've all seen the pictures of Chinese cities that have pollution. I'm not quite sure if they care about the coral reef of Australia, climate change, but I'm very sure they care about pollution. There are tens of millions of people in China that heat their home with those coal briquettes, the same way they did in London 200 years ago. The only way that they can make this go away, now it's already illegal, but when the winter comes, people do what they do, is to provide the people more electricity so that they use electricity instead of these things. We also know that China's biggest power source has been coal. There's a list of where their power came from in 2014. And we look at 2016. Now remember what I promised you? If I ever show you a graph, I'm going to point exactly at what I want you to look at. So watch this. Basically, it's this right here. By the year 2016, they were so successful in the generation of wind power and solar power, it shocked everyone. They did this in a few years. 150 gigawatts of installed wind power, over 100 gigawatts of solar power. Now, before, everyone thought they will keep growing coal generation. Not anymore. For 3 years in a row, it's falling and falling and falling. They're going to do the same thing the United States did. They're going to convert many, not all, many of their coal power plants to gas. Do you remember the deal that Xi Jinping made with Putin in 2015? It's called the Power of Siberia. It's a gas pipeline that's coming from the north of China. Has everyone heard about One Belt, One Road? There are 2 gas pipelines coming from the Stans. They're going to use natural gas to augment their continuing growth in renewable energy. They are the leaders in all of these things. If I show you this picture, I think it's a fair depiction. The largest economy in the world is the United States. It's about $18 trillion. The Chinese economy today has grown and is about $12.5 trillion. They don't want to be the factory of the world anymore. What they're saying, it will be innovated in China, and then we will export the technology around the world. When you're talking about addressing pollution and creating these new technologies, Mr. Trump wants to protect the coal mining industry rather than look at the growth, because it's a promise he made. The Chinese do not look at this like they are being punched to the face. They are the leaders in solar power, wind power, curtailment. This is about using all this green energy. Electric cars, electric buses. They are by far the leaders in all these businesses. Do you know who the world's largest manufacturer and customer of the automobile is now? It's China. Now, I told you that it was about 90 million cars are bought and sold. 27 million are in China. 17 million in the United States. So the most important market for every automotive manufacturer is China. And they've now said that in the next 15 or 20 years, you will no longer be able to sell an engine made of gasoline or diesel. So is Germany, so is France, so is England, so is India, so is Norway. The things I'm telling you are not something in fantasy land that will occur 50 years from now. They will start impacting investors and companies around the world, and the single biggest winner is you, the consumer, because you're going to have a lot more convenience. The traditional view of metals, mining in general, and that's been the negative connotation. If China is slow, mining will suffer. Yeah? And investors will play with that. This is talking about copper. When you become an advanced economy, there is so-called copper per person, what's been utilized and installed. In America, it's 650 pounds per person. Japan, 600. South Korea, which is now advanced a lot in 30 years, 550 pounds of copper per each one person. In China, it's still only about 160 pounds per person. So that's going to grow. So I will suggest to you that we will have reliable growth for mining and metals because of that. But what's the new invisible hand? I do lectures all over the world and I speak with various professionals, and I suggest to them that it's very hard to model the future of energy and where all these things are going to be used and where the consumption will come from. 15 years ago, when China started to grow, it was the invisible hand that surprised everyone in global mining. Today, it's modern energy. Most people that are experts in oil are not experts in power systems. If they're experts in power systems, they're not experts in copper. You have to put it all together, and you start coming to some conclusions. But what I told my friends at CRU, it is almost impossible to model the magnitude of how much copper and lithium and nickel will be required in the future. The third important date is this one, and it only occurred 2 years after the last one, if you recall. And this was very important. This was done by Elon Musk of Tesla Corporation, and on this day, he showed the world the solar roof. Most people may or may not be familiar with that. Like the fracking moment on oil, what you are looking at here is a game changer. This is a game changer. Society, government, investors do not comprehend the magnitude of what is in this picture. You have to appreciate that this is energy disruption, because when you have a house like this, you're off grid. You don't need corporations anymore. In the United States of America, 5 million roofs, the roof of the house, are installed or renovated new each 1 year. This roof makes electricity. This is the highest quality roof your money can buy. Now, Tesla will tell us it costs the same as a normal high quality roof. It's very strong, nothing can smash it, and when you put it together with a battery, you can see that battery here, and then you utilize an automobile that runs on electricity, you are now off-grid. If you're off-grid, people will tell me, well, you're going to use a lot less copper because you don't need the distribution. Well, yes and no. The average American house has about 400 pounds of copper. This house would have more than 1,000 pounds of copper. The average house doesn't have too much silver. This house would have a lot of silver, lithium, nickel. You can make the solar panels with solar panels. So the reason oil is important is because we still have to have rubber tires, seats for the car, plastics, rubbers, things like that. That is a growth business, making those products, but not transportation fuels. And the reason I'm so excited about this is because people ask me, what do I think about climate change? What's my personal view? And I answer like this. I tell them I'm kind of like the Chinese. It's just the right thing to do. You get so much convenience. Think about living in London. If every bus and every car was not diesel, even if they made the electricity 200 kilometers away with coal, the comfort you have in that city, I don't want to breathe the fumes. I also understand that I don't have the ability to go to Africa and tell someone, you will never have electricity. Or go to India and tell someone, you will never have water in your home. You can't do this. The United States of America has a capacity of 1,100 gigawatts. Do you know what the electrical capacity of Africa is? Sub-Saharan Africa, excluding South Africa, has about 900 million people. They have an electrical capacity of 28 gigawatts. That number is going to go way higher. And it's going to come from many, many sources. But because of what you saw in the last house, this is the way many people are going to have comfort and convenience. And they're going to have electricity, the magic of the world. And this will occur in tens of millions of villages. The point you have to take from this, before, there was not 1 pound consumption of copper in this village. Today, you have to model how much copper will be installed in all these villages. Now, I don't know the number. I don't need to know the number. It's a big number. Anytime you multiply a small number by a huge number, you end up with a big number. And that's what's going to happen. Energy has been disrupted. And I think like an investor. And I believe that you have to look at this and position yourself, your investments, your corporation, because in the future, that's what will occur. If what they're telling us, we will use less fossil fuels, then we need more mining. Many things that are mined, because it's not possible without it. So if you look 7 years forward, 10 years forward, these will all be growth businesses. So let's go back to my little visit at Bloomberg last year. I was telling people that copper is a good investment, and fossil fuels, you need to be careful, because the main thing with fossil fuels is politics. How'd I do? Okay, yeah, copper up 50%, oil did nothing. Here's gold. Copper up 50%, gold did nothing. Let me show you silver. Plata. Now this is a different one, because I believe silver is very important to the future of energy. So silver also should be like copper, fuerte. I believe this. But what we don't know is the utility of money in silver and the situation with the mines. With copper, we know that. This is the price of palladium. Palladium is used in catalytic converters when it's gasoline. Did you get that, translator? Palladium is used in the mufflers for catalytic converters in gasoline. Platinum is used with diesel. And diesel is now not a growth fuel anymore. This is why palladium has been strong. The Financial Times of London last week ran a story saying that palladium is the hottest commodity in the world. Now I know my friends there, and I immediately sent them the graph of copper. I said, excuse me, you forgot about copper, the other precious metal. It has very quietly been a very strong metal of the future. Where shall this copper come from? These are 5 major commodities. This is McKinsey and Company. These are consultants. Pretty busy. I want you to look at one thing, the brown line, right here. The only commodity that the accountants see growing is cobre. No matter what choice industry, government, and society chooses, it will be electricity. And that electricity demands copper. Now, aluminum will also play a role. We don't have enough copper to do this all. So the next question is, where's the copper going to come from? It decoupled. I believe copper should have decoupled from oil because they're different. When you go away from oil, you need more electricity. Okay. The world's oil supply comes from 4,700,000 wells. Did you know that 50% of the world's primary copper comes from about 22 copper mines? They're totally different. Here's the future. The CAGR growth of copper production, remember, I promised you, I'm going to show you what I want you to look at. Don't get confused by all the lines and all the words. I'll get there. But copper supply and demand has grown for over 100 years by about 3%, the CAGR growth. If we don't reinvest in copper mines, that's what happens. The CAGR growth is a minus 3.4%. So let's get this right. We have demand growing by 3 or 4 or 5%, and I believe that's going to be something that's going to be reliable. And if we don't invest in copper mines, it's going to fall by 3.5%. As an investor, that is a fantastic scenario waiting to occur. And I believe the reason copper has decoupled, separated from all commodities is because people are realizing this, and it's becoming a page 1 story. If you look at the reserves of copper miners, we have not found that much. No, I'm not a copper miner, but I'm just saying for the industry. In the year 2010, the top 15 copper producers had a reported reserve grade of 1.2%. Today, it's 0.72% copper. You might think that's not a big deal. However, if you're a copper miner, it matters a lot. So if you have a big copper mine and you're in Chile and you move 30 million tons of rock per year, when you go to 0.75% copper, you now need to mine 40 million tons for the same amount of copper at the end of the year. Now, I don't need to be a mining engineer, but that's going to cost a lot more money to move 10 million tons copper more. I will leave you with this final note. Now we're going to have some fun Q&A. My friend Raphael and I, we're going to go over some of these topics and maybe elaborate on them. But the way I see it is that real demand growth will occur for all electricity metals. The more important that metal is, the more you need to scrutinize supply and demand. And of course, the only way you can make something that is currently uneconomic is higher prices in the underlying commodity to make it economic. My name is Gianni Kovacevic. I love commodities and I love telling stories, and I encourage everyone to, if you're interested, read a copy of my book, and I hope the young people in your life will have a better appreciation of electricity. Thank you so much.